sign the resignation, or we terminate you.
I never thought my own mother would force me to choose between my dignity and 20 years of my life. Sign the resignation, or we terminate you tonight. Those were my mother's exact words as she slid a manila folder across the mahogany boardroom table. Her voice was ice cold, like I was just another employee, not the daughter who'd given up everything to build her company. My uncle sat next to her, staring at the paperwork. The CFO wouldn't even look at me. They all knew what this was really about. My cousin Trevor had just been promoted to a position he had no business holding, and my salary made him look bad on paper. 30 minutes, my mother said. Don't make this difficult. I could have fought back. I could have reminded her that I'd built half the systems, keeping this company alive. But I didn't. Instead, I said something that made her pause. I'll resign, but I'll write it myself. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. She waved her hand. Fine, just make it clean. That's when I knew she'd forgotten the most important lesson she ever taught me. Never sign anything without reading every single word. I took out my phone and typed one sentence. Just one. I printed it, signed it, and slid it back. My mother didn't even read it. She just smiled and told me security would escort me out. 5 days later, my phone rang at 6:58 in the morning. This is Garrett Finch from Finch & Associates, the man said. We need to discuss the wording of your resignation letter. I smiled. You mean the part where my resignation becomes effective only upon full settlement of all compensation owed to me under company policy and state law? Silence. Then a shaky breath. That's not standard procedure. No, I replied. But it is enforceable. I was 19 when I started at my mother's company. My friends were heading to college, while I was learning how to answer phones and file reports. If you want respect here, earn it, my mother said on my first day. So I did. 5 years in customer service before she let me touch anything important. 5 years of proving myself. When she finally moved me to operations, I renegotiated every vendor contract and saved the company $200,000. She didn't congratulate me. She just said, good, now do it again. 10 years in, I was managing payroll and inventory. Trevor was in college, partying on my mother's dime. He'd visit during summer break, and she'd parade him around like he was the future. I was the present, but he was the golden child. I should have seen it coming. The way she started asking Trevor for opinions, even though he knew nothing. The way my uncle started avoiding my eyes. 20 years of loyalty, and all it got me was an escort to the parking lot. The morning after Garrett called, I pulled out every contract, every policy document. I made a spreadsheet of everything they owed me. Deferred compensation, unused vacation, profit sharing, bonuses never paid. When I finished, I stared at the total. It was more than I had expected. A lot more. My phone rang. My mother, calling from her personal cell. You knew exactly what you were doing, she said, voice shaking. I learned it from you, I said. Every contract, every clause. She hung up, but I could hear regret in that silence. The boardroom had felt smaller that night. My mother sat at the head of the table, eyes harder than usual. My uncle kept glancing at his phone. The CFO was sweating, and Trevor wasn't even there to watch. When my mother slid that folder across, her hand was steady. No hesitation. Sign or get terminated. 20 years reduced to an ultimatum. The resignation letter I wrote was one sentence, but that sentence contained a clause she taught me years earlier when we were negotiating a supplier contract. You could make an agreement contingent on one condition, and if that condition wasn't met, the whole thing was void. I hereby resign effective upon receipt of full settlement of all outstanding compensation and benefits owed. She didn't read it, just filed it away and sent me packing. But that night, someone in accounting did read it, and they understood what it meant. By morning, Garrett Finch was already awake, probably calculating how much this would cost. The second time my mother called, she wasn't shaking anymore. She was furious. Do you have any idea what you've done? The board is demanding answers. The CFO says we might have to delay the quarterly distribution. Good, I said. Maybe Trevor can explain to them why his promotion was worth bankrupting the family business. That hit harder than I'd intended. She went quiet for a long moment. This isn't about Trevor. Yes, it is, I said. It's always been about Trevor. By the third day, Garrett had called 4 times. Each conversation was shorter and more desperate than the last. He kept trying different angles. We could dispute the deferred compensation clause. We could argue that profit sharing wasn't guaranteed. We could claim the car was a separate agreement. I had an answer for everything, because I'd written half those policies myself. On the 4th call, he changed tactics. What if we offered a settlement? Something reasonable that works for both parties? I've already calculated what's reasonable, I said. Every dollar I'm owed, plus interest for the delayed payments. You have the number. That number was sitting on my mother's desk right now. I knew because my uncle had texted me. He wasn't supposed to, but he did anyway. She's not sleeping, he wrote. The board meets tomorrow. Good, I texted back. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I promise, what happens next is worth it. The board meeting happened without me, obviously. But I heard about it anyway. Small company, big gossip. Apparently my mother tried to argue that my resignation was voluntary, and therefore the settlement clause didn't apply. The company lawyer shot that down immediately. She'd given me an ultimatum in front of witnesses. That made it coerced. Trevor spoke up, trying to defend his aunt. That didn't go well either. Turns out, when you promote someone unqualified, people notice. His first quarterly report was a disaster, and now the board was wondering if getting rid of me had been a mistake. My mother called again that night. This time she sounded tired. Please, she said. Just tell me what you want. I want exactly what I earned, I said. Nothing more. Nothing less. She started to cry. I'd never heard my mother cry before. Not when my father left. Not when the company almost went under in 2008. Never. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know, I said. But sorry doesn't pay my bills. The settlement took 2 weeks to process. 2 weeks of lawyers reviewing contracts and accountants verifying numbers. 2 weeks of my mother calling and hanging up without speaking. 2 weeks of watching my uncle send worried texts that I mostly ignored. Trevor tried to call once. I didn't answer. What could he possibly say that would matter now? The morning the money hit my account, I was sitting at a coffee shop 3 blocks from the office. My phone buzzed with a notification. I looked at the number, checked it twice, then closed my banking app and ordered another coffee. It was done. I didn't celebrate, didn't call anyone, didn't post anything on social media about new beginnings or closed chapters. I just sat there, watching people rush past a window on their way to jobs they probably hated, and wondered if any of them had ever been betrayed by someone they loved. My mother sent one final text that afternoon. We need to talk. No, we don't, I replied. But we did. Because 3 months later, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten, not typed. Her handwriting, shaky and uncertain. Inside was an apology that meant everything and nothing at the same time, and a question I never thought she'd ask. What happens next would change everything I thought I knew about family, forgiveness, and the price of standing up for yourself. The letter sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I opened it. I knew my mother's handwriting, those careful loops and sharp edges that matched her personality perfectly. But the envelope felt different, heavier somehow. When I finally tore it open, the first thing I noticed was how her handwriting shook. My mother never shook. Not in boardrooms, not during audits, not when vendors tried to rip her off. But this letter looked like it was written by someone whose hands couldn't stay still. I'm sorry. That's how it started. Just 2 words at the top of the page, underlined twice. Then paragraphs of explanation that didn't really explain anything. She was under pressure from the board. Trevor was family and deserved a chance. The company needed fresh leadership. Excuses. All of them. But the last paragraph made me sit down. I need to know if you'll ever forgive me. She wrote, not as your former boss, as your mother, because I'm watching everything fall apart, and I finally understand what I lost. My phone rang before I could process that. It was my uncle. You need to come to the office, he said. Now, I haven't worked there in 3 months, I reminded him. I know, but Trevor just quit. The CFO is threatening to resign. And your mother locked herself in her office 2 hours ago and won't come out. That's not my problem anymore, I said. But even as I said it, I felt something twist in my chest. Something that felt a lot like guilt. I didn't go to the office that day. Or the next. But the calls kept coming. My uncle, the CFO. Even the head of HR, who I trained 7 years ago. Everyone wanted me to come back, to fix things, to save the company I'd already saved 100 times before. The news about Trevor spread fast. Apparently, he'd walked out during a client meeting, told the board he was tired of being compared to me, and drove off in the company car that technically still belonged to them. Classic Trevor. Dramatic exit. Zero planning. With Trevor gone, all his failures became visible. Projects he'd mismanaged, clients he'd alienated, systems he'd broken trying to prove he could do things better than I had. The company was bleeding money, and everyone knew it. My mother finally called on day 5. Her voice was small, nothing like the CEO who demanded my resignation. I made a mistake, she said. The biggest mistake of my life. Yes, I said. You did. Will you come back? I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. You fired me, Mom. You chose Trevor over 20 years of loyalty. Why would I ever come back? Because I'm asking. Not as your boss. As your mother who's watching her life's work crumble because she was too proud to see what was right in front of her. The silence between us felt like an ocean. I could hear her breathing, waiting for an answer I didn't have. I'll think about it, I finally said. But thinking about it meant remembering everything. The late nights, the sacrificed friendships, the years of proving myself over and over just to be treated like I was disposable. Could I really go back to that? The settlement money was still in my account, untouched. I'd been afraid to spend it, like using it would make this whole nightmare more real. But sitting in my apartment at 2 in the morning, staring at my mother's letter, I realized something. I didn't want revenge. I never had. I just wanted to be seen, to be valued, to matter as much as Trevor did just because he had the right last name and a business degree. The next morning, I drove to the office, not because my mother asked, but because I needed to see it for myself. The receptionist's face lit up when I walked in. Oh, thank God, she said. Please tell me you're back. Just visiting, I said. The office looked different. Smaller somehow. Dirtier. The plants in the lobby were dying. There were boxes stacked in the hallway that should have been shipped weeks ago. This place had been running like a machine when I left. Now it looked like a junkyard. My mother's door was closed. I knocked once and walked in without waiting for an answer. She looked up from her desk, and I barely recognized her. She'd aged 10 years and 3 months. Gray hair she used to dye, circles under her eyes, a tremor in her hands. You came, she whispered. I came to get my things from storage, I said, and to tell you something face to face. She braced herself like I was about to hit her. You taught me everything I know about business, I said, about contracts and leverage and never showing weakness. But you forgot to teach me the most important thing. That family should mean more than profit margins. That loyalty goes both ways. That you can't treat people like assets and expect them to stay when you decide they're liabilities. Tears ran down her face. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you only know it now because it's costing you money. I left the office that day with my box of personal items and no plans to return. My mother didn't try to stop me. She just sat there crying, probably realizing that some mistakes can't be fixed with apologies. But life has a funny way of teaching you things when you least expect it. 2 weeks later, I ran into the CFO at a grocery store. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. The company's in real trouble, he said. Without you, we're losing clients every week. Your mother won't admit it, but we might have to shut down by Christmas. That's not my problem, I said. He nodded. I know, but I also know you built that place with your bare hands. And I know you loved it, even when it didn't love you back. So I'm just asking you to think about what you want your legacy to be. That word stuck with me. Legacy. What did I want my legacy to be? The daughter who got thrown away? The employee who got revenge? Or something else entirely? I thought about it for 3 days. Thought about my mother's shaking hands and my uncle's worried texts. Thought about all the employees who'd be out of work if the company failed. People who had nothing to do with this mess. Thought about the version of myself who'd started at 19 with nothing but hope and determination. Then I picked up the phone and called my mother. "I'll come back," I said, "but not as your employee. As a partner. Equal ownership, equal say in every decision. And Trevor never works here again." The pause felt like forever. Then she said, "Deal." The contract took 2 weeks to draft. My mother's lawyer tried to add clauses that would have given her more control, but I caught every single one. I'd learned from the best, after all. When we signed the partnership agreement, we didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just shook hands like the business partners we now were. The office celebrated my return with cake and streamers, but I could see the questions in everyone's eyes. Would this work? Could we actually move forward after everything that happened? The first month was brutal. My mother and I disagreed on almost everything. She wanted to keep doing things the old way. I wanted to rebuild from scratch. We argued in every meeting, challenged every decision, pushed back on every plan. But slowly, something changed. She started listening to me. Actually listening. Not just waiting for her turn to talk. And I started seeing her not as the CEO who'd betrayed me, but as a woman who'd built an empire and made one terrible mistake. 6 months in, the company was stable again. A year later, we were growing. My mother retired from daily operations and made me CEO. On my first day in her old office, she stopped by with coffee. "I'm proud of you," she said. "I should have said that 20 years ago. Every single day." "I know," I said. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Thank you for coming back. For giving me a second chance I didn't deserve. You taught me everything about business," I said. "But I had to teach myself about forgiveness. Turns out that's harder than any contract negotiation." She smiled. A real smile, not the corporate one she used to wear like armor. And for the first time in my life, I saw my mother as just a person. Flawed, broken, trying her best. That's what I learned from all of this. That standing up for yourself doesn't mean you have to burn bridges forever. That forgiveness isn't weakness. And that sometimes the best revenge is building something better than what you lost. My mother and I will never have a perfect relationship. Too much has happened for that. But we have something real now. Something built on respect instead of hierarchy. And that's worth more than any settlement check. If this story moved you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us about a time you had to stand up for yourself, or when you chose forgiveness over anger. Your story might inspire someone who needs to hear it today. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. We read every comment, and your support means everything to us. Thank you for being part of this family.